Hey everyone, my name is McKenna, also known as Sylphic Studios, and welcome to my very first YouTube video. To keep my introduction short and sweet, you see what I did there, I'm a 20-year-old doll artist and collector based out of the lovely state of Arizona. That's definitely sarcasm. You might have already seen my work on here in YouTube in the form of shorts or maybe on TikTok or Instagram. I've been creating short form content for about a year now and I absolutely love it, but I've always known that eventually I wanted to make long form content just because making longer videos I can include more of my process, and with the work that I do, I like to show the process of what I'm doing, so I'm really happy to finally be able to make long form YouTube videos. So, with that being said, you've already clicked on the video, so you should already know what I'll be covering here, but if you missed it, I'll be showing you guys step by step how I change the skin tones of my dolls. Before we get into that though, I do just want to explain the differences in each G3 body, as well as why we might need to do a skin tone change, just so you guys are aware of why we do this. So I prefer to work on G3 Monster High myself, but I'm sure that this technique would work on any doll body as long as it's made from some sort of plastic. I love working on G3 Monster High specifically for a lot of different reasons, but I'd say the most important one is the diversity in their height and their body types. I feel like no other doll brand has done it as well as Mattel has when it comes to G3 Monster High's diversity and everything, and it makes for a lot of different fun mix and match type of customs you can make with the different heads and the different bodies, so it's a lot of fun. Unfortunately though, every single ghoul has their own specific identifying, unique feature about them though. So for example, G3 Cleo has bandages that are molded on her body, and then Draculaura has pointed ears, and then Claudine has hair tufts and wolf ears, so it kind of just depends on the ghoul. But that definitely matters when you are customizing them, because if they don't have the features that you need, you do need to make some alterations. So you just have to keep all of that in mind and pick your poison when it comes to the doll you're wanting to use. Some characters have it worse than others. Sorry, Cleo. So that means that other dolls will be more versatile than others. Like Draculaura is way more versatile to use than Cleo for me, specifically, and Frankie too, because of the prosthetic leg. So you just have to work with what you're needing and what you have. So when it comes to picking a base body to use for your doll, the skin tone of it, the base doll, should not matter if you're going to paint over it. So just look at the body type and the height and everything like that. If the doll you're wanting to use has a darker skin tone or a darker colored body than what you're wanting, then that will matter a little bit and you'll have to color correct, but that isn't that big of a deal. I'll show you guys that later. So for this video, I'll be showing you guys 3 different bodies that I just painted for my next 3 commissions. One is a Draculaura, one is a Twila, and one is a Cleo, so that you guys can see all the differences in what I'm talking about here. And both the Twila and the Cleo had to be color corrected, so I'll be able to show you guys that whole process as well. So after, oh my god, 3 minutes of yapping, we're finally getting into the tutorial. Sorry guys. And to start out with, we will be doing Draculaura. So here is Draculaura in all of her glory. I went ahead and took out her arms and her hands and put them into my limb cube. You guys will see that in a second. Yep, there they all are with the other arms and hands of the other 2. This is just a piece of that gardening foam stuff, and I just shoved the pegs in there. It works really great. I recommend it. And this is extremely important, but make sure your doll is sealed with Mr. Super Clear before you start painting them, just so that your paint actually wants to work. And this is the paint that I use. It is Apple Barrel Satin Acrylic Paint, and this is the color Peach for this doll specifically. The brand doesn't matter too much, but what does matter is that the paint that you're using for the body paint is satin. To seal everything in, I use matte Mod Podge, and then I also have these little plastic cups to hold my paint and my water while I'm painting, because for this technique you have to water down your paint and your Mod Podge, and it can get a little bit messy if you don't have cups. For brushes, I recommend using small, kind of flat, square brushes so you can get the most even coverage possible and no streaks. These are the brushes I have. They're from a big pack on Amazon. And now it's time to actually water down the paint and get started. So I don't have an exact science. I literally just pour it in there like this. I eyeball it. I really wish I had exact measurements, but I really don't. I literally just eyeball it until I feel like the consistency is good, I'm adding more water there. And I tried showing it in this clip, but you can't see the consistency right here, but basically you want it to be more watery than painty, so whenever you're doing that with the paint, it isn't all sticky and goopy, if that makes sense. You want it to be thinner but still have coverage and be opaque so that the paint still paints. It's really hard to explain, I'm so sorry, but you'll know if your paint is too watery if whenever you try using it on your doll body, if it'll start going away from where you put it, if that makes sense. Like, it will not want to stick to the body, and you'll be able to tell, trust me. And if you see that, that means that you need to add more paint to your mixture. Another thing I look out for whenever I'm trying to figure out the right consistency is whenever I put it on my brush, like if it seeps into the bristles at all or a little bit too fast, I feel like it's too watery, so I add more paint. And if it's too thick and like doesn't really seep into the bristles, then I add more water. It's kind of, you just have to play with it. I promise it'll make sense if you play with it. But basically, as you saw, I start out with the limbs first, either a hand or the arm, doesn't matter. I do one layer on all 4 of those, and then I like to start on one of the legs, and I hold them by like their bust area, waist area, like this. And I just work my way from the front all the way to the back and then down to the foot. And I don't know if you can tell, but if you see the way that I have the doll posed, like the legs kind of outward with the knees bent a little bit and then the arms out the way they are, the way that the doll is posed is 100% intentional, and that's so that I know that I'm getting like the most surface area whenever I'm painting her. Like, so whenever you move her knees, you can, you know, see that her knees are painted and you can't see like a harsh line of where the paint ends. So I like to position my dolls like this so that I get everywhere that I possibly can, and then whenever the paint dries, I'll move them to get the areas that I can't really get. And this is what her legs were looking like after one layer of paint. They're looking pretty good, as you can see. They aren't streaky at all. They're looking pretty nice. I did the rest of her entire first layer off camera, so this is what her entire body looked like after one layer. You can kind of see the pink peeking through, but after a couple layers that won't be an issue at all. So now it's on to layer number 2. And in between body paint layers, I don't spray MSC or I don't seal her or anything. I just paint on top of the paint, just so you guys know. I only seal in the beginning to prime the body and at the end to, you know, keep everything sealed in. And this is kind of the way that I like to paint my thighs. That sounds so weird. I start from the front and then I just go around the back and work around the back. And then I like to paint top down. It's really important when you're painting to only paint in one direction so you don't have streaks. So yeah, very important. And then once her thighs and her legs are done, it's onto her stomach and like her back and underwear area. So I just paint all of that one direction. I prefer to do her stomach and back horizontally just because I feel like it fits the area better. And then I flipped her around and did her back. I just didn't show it in this clip. So you'll see me go directly to her chest after this. And now, like I said, I'm doing her chest, and I kind of do it horizontally as well. You'll see what I mean if you do this for yourself. You kind of just paint the way that feels right and make sure that there's no streaks. And then after that, I do the same thing to her arms, and then this is what she was looking like after layer number 2. She was already looking pretty good, but I decided to do one more layer just to even everything out. Doing the least amount of layers as possible is ideal, just so that you don't have a lot of layers that bulk up around the joints and everything. But this is her after 3 layers, and I felt like she was looking pretty good and done after this. So now it's time to seal her with my matte Mod Podge, and I also water this down too because Mod Podge is really thick and you definitely want to water this down so that you don't ruin everything you just did. And for this, I just do the exact same thing. I go limb by limb and then I end up doing her entire body. You can do multiple layers of the Mod Podge if you want to, but I find that just doing one and then spraying her with Mr. Super Clear afterward is enough to keep the skin tone and everything intact and protected. So after 3 layers of paint and a layer of Mod Podge, this is what she's looking like all done. I think that she looks really good. There's like no streaks, there's no patchiness, there's nothing. I'm really happy with this doll, but now it's on to Twila to show you how to color correct and change her skin. So for Twila specifically, since she is purple, for this body, I am going for more of a tan, like olivey skin tone, so I am going to have to color correct her a little bit with some white paint, and these are just all of the materials I'm using just to show you guys. So if you're doing any drastic skin tone change at all, I highly recommend that you neutralize the doll first with white paint. That sounds like surgical or something, but I recommend that you neutralize their skin tone with white paint first so that it's as close to a blank base as you can possibly get. So for example, with this Twila, I am changing her from straight up purple to a human skin tone, like a olivey tan skin tone. And if I put the brown paint, the tan paint over top the purple, no matter how many layers I did, it would end up looking muddy just because the undertone of the doll itself is purple. So by neutralizing it with white, you kind of fix that sort of. It's not 100% unless you do a lot of layers, but you know what I mean. You get what I mean. And I left this clip in here to show you guys how I paint the torso, because I cut that out of the first doll. So yeah, I just paint everything the same direction, as you can see. And this is how I paint like their sides. I just flip them over and try blending it to the back as best as I can. So yeah, painting any doll body is basically the same thing. Just if you're doing something that's kind of drastic, just make sure that you neutralize everything with white first so that you don't get any weird undertones or nothing like peeks through that you don't want. And now that I did that, I'm going in with my actual skin tone color, and you can already see, like, yeah, the first layer isn't going to look very good, but this is a whole trust the process thing. It'll look worse before it starts looking better, I promise. The footage for this Twila doll and also the next Cleo doll will be a little bit shorter than the first one, just because it's basically the same exact process. I just painted them with white first, just to neutralize their skin, so it's literally the same exact thing over and over again. It just takes a lot of practice and just like hands-on playing with the paint and stuff to see how everything works together, to see what'll look the best for you. But if there is one tip or one thing I do want to mention though, is that joints, the joint chipping that you see and that you will guess that you'll probably get is inevitable. In my experience, I have not been able to find a single technique or a single like product or a single thing that I can do to stop the joints from chipping, and it's gotten to the point now where I feel like the doll just looks better without the joints painted than if I were to paint the joints and then if they were to start peeling and cracking off. So I personally don't paint the joints because I feel like that's just the L that I'd rather take, is that the joints aren't painted other than the joints cracking and peeling, if that makes sense. So you can paint the joints if you would like. I just recommend that you paint the joint itself only and make sure that the paint doesn't drip or get anywhere onto the arm, because if you move it, it'll start cracking and peeling. So just please be really careful. If anyone finds a way to stop that from happening, please let me know. But I have unfortunately not been able to find any way of keeping that from happening. So until then, my dolls will have colored joints. It's okay though, it's fine. So this is what Twila was looking like after one layer of the skin tone paint. It looks really patchy, but trust me, it'll get better. This is after 2 layers, and you can already see that it's starting to get a lot more even. Still not 100% yet, but we're getting there. This is after layer number 3, definitely looking a lot more even, but I wanted to do a couple more layers just to make sure. And while doing layer 4, I spilled my paint because I'm stupid. But anyway, that's what she was looking like after layer number 4, and then I felt like she just needed one more just to make sure that none of the purple peeks through. So this is what she was looking like after that final layer, and she looks really, really even. Like, could you guess that she was purple before? Probably not. Maybe if you knew that she was a Twila, but yeah, I think that she looks really good. So off camera, I watered down the same Mod Podge I used earlier, and I am just painting her body like I did with the previous one. This isn't the best shot, I know, I'm sorry, but here's like a general overview of how she was looking like completely done, and now we're on to the third custom, which is the blue Cleo body. So for this one, I needed to make her into a bright blue color, which is pretty opposite of tan, so I needed to neutralize her skin with the white first, so I did the same technique that I did on Twila for her entire body. And you'll see that my blue paint for the skin tone isn't really mixed together, and that's because I actually mixed together a matte and a satin acrylic paint, because those are the paints that I had. And it definitely still does work. Your paint will just become unmixed eventually, but it can mix together and it'll work perfectly fine, trust me. And now that her white's done, it's time to start painting her with blue, and you can already see that it's showing up a lot better on the white than it would if I were just to paint it straight on her skin tone. And yeah, here I am just painting the rest of her body. I sped it up a little bit so you guys get some more footage. So while I'm painting her in the background, I actually asked you guys over on my Instagram if you guys had any questions specifically about body painting that I could answer, and I actually answered most of them earlier in the video, but one of them that I didn't get to answer quite yet is how do I know if I have the perfect skin tone color mixed? And this is like a pretty difficult question, honestly, because it could vary depending on the base doll that you're using and just the skin tone and undertones of the character you're trying to create. So for example, for all of my dolls that I've made so far with lighter skin tones, I've just used the peach apple barrel paint because it's a pretty universal lighter skin tone to use, and it's worked for me perfectly fine every single time, and I think that it looks great. But in any other case, if you can't find a color that already would match, then you'll have to mix a color, and Honestly, it just depends on the base doll that you're using and what your paint is looking like once you actually start painting, because you just won't know until you put paint on the plastic and see how it looks. So I personally just use my knowledge of like color theory and what I think would look best and just make some concoctions, and most of the time it works. I think at this point this is like layer number 4, and I decided after this one to do just one more layer because she was looking pretty good, but you can kind of see the tan poking through, so I just wanted to do one more. So here she is, all done. She's definitely bright blue. And then after this, I just did the usual water down Mod Podge and seal her type of thing. And then I sprayed all of the bodies with Mr. Super Clear afterwards just to seal them in one more time and to prep them for anything else afterward that they needed. But other than that, and waiting for them to dry, you're pretty much done. And if you need to do their face up still, and if you need to change their face up color, which you probably will, you do the same exact steps that you do on the body and it works perfectly fine. So yeah, I think that that's the end of my tutorial. I think that I went over basically everything I can think of, but if you guys have any extra questions or anything else, please let me know. I will be happy to help you and answer you in the comments. And if you're wanting to see how these dolls are coming along, I highly recommend you follow me on my Instagram because I do post a lot of updates on there. I'm really active, so I highly recommend keeping up with me over there if you'd like. I am really excited about these dolls, and I think that you guys will be too once you see them, so yeah. Anyway, I'll stop talking now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.